Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Welcome to another episode of Cellar Door Skeptics. Tonight, we decided to pull the focus away from politics. And
well, we did that last time, didn't we? Didn't we just kind of ramble?
That was two episodes ago. You're off on your time frame, man. Did you lose a week here?
Yeah, I did actually. My dad had a kidney stone surgery last week, and so he's been just in and out doing work for a little bit, whatever he can. So I've been working so much that the whole all of the day units are not separate anymore. It's just one giant chunk where I sleep a tiny bit in the middle. That's all I got, man. Everything is mush right now. So anyways, we're dropping off a little politics so we can rock and roll with some science.
Yeah, we have a guest that's coming on the show in a few minutes, and we haven't had her on in at least a year. And dare I say maybe 2 years, but I'm hoping it's only one, because if my time is that slipped, there's only a couple of reasons for that, and neither one are good.
We're closing in on middle-aged dads. There is no time anymore. It's just what people need from us, and we do the thing, and then we just go to sleep. Then we wake up when we're 50. That's what's happening right now, I think.
I smoke a little bit of pot, though. I don't know about you.
Oh, yeah, no, not me.
I don't have to worry. At least I have an excuse for my memory slip.
All right. So yeah, it's been a little while since we've talked to her, though.
But we thought we'd bring our friend Abbie back on, or shall we say, Dr. Abbie, because now I believe she has her full credentials. And the nice thing about this is we had her back on, I think, it had been the first part of the show, probably within the first 30 episodes. And, some of the studies and different things that she's been involved with is vaccinations on all different fronts, but especially the HIV virus. And so we thought tonight it'd be wonderful to talk about vaccinations again, not only because recently people are finally acknowledging we need vaccines, but there's the rhetoric is dying out. But if we can convince enough new people to actually start engaging in the conversation, maybe, hopefully we'll be able to provide vaccines to the rest of the world and not have to worry about these crazy cuckoo people.
Well, we're importing measles into the United States right now. Detroit just had 7, 8, 10 cases, so it's been pretty wild. So we're basically we want to bring her on because she is an actual authority, and you and I, we read a lot of stuff on the internet, but we are not authorities, and so some of the things that we may think we know, we might be a little bit off, and she can specify and make it a little bit clearer for us. So we just want to make sure that we bring someone on. If we need to be corrected, we can be corrected.
There you go. So without further ado, please welcome Dr. Abbie to the show. How are you doing tonight, ma'am?
Doing great. And I can't believe if it's been 2 years. Time flies when Trump's president.
Yeah.
Yeah. And your puppy is 14 years older. That's insane.
13.
Okay.
He was about to turn 13. Oh my gosh. Yeah. He's still puppy.
I think they always are a little bit.
Yeah. He actually really is. Nobody believes me when I tell them that he's 13. I mean, he plays, he wants to go walkies. He's actually on a diet now. Because I still give him the regular dog food and not the senior dog food. So he's on a diet and he's super grumpy and super talkative now. We can't eat without getting hollered at. It's a poor thing.
Yeah, and if did you used to feed them table scraps too?
Oh yeah, yeah.
No.
Whatever I ate, he ate. I mean, whether it was chicken, whether it was Pop-Tarts. I mean, he's my buddy. And
wow.
now he doesn't get to do that, and he is a cranky puppy.
Oh man, so he's basically stuck on like the senior citizens, like the morning and lunch place. Their special one egg and one piece of toast. Like he's yeah.
He's so cranky.
I would be insanely cranky if I was.
And at this point though, it's like he's 13, and I'm like, why not? Why can't he have a pulled pork sandwich with me? Who cares?
Does he bark? Does he bark at kids to get off his lawn already?
No, he loves kids. See, he doesn't take his crankiness out on other people. He's still sweet with other people. It's just me at this point. He knows the source of his lack of goodies.
Well, at least he gets to live. I mean,
yes.
You could be feeding him all that stuff, and it'll just negatively affect him at some point.
It could, and if he gets too chonky, it's not good for his knees and his little doggy wrist, and so it's for the best.
Yeah. Well, now that you've heard Cellar Door Skeptics edition of dogs,
of puppies,
let's talk about science. So we'd had you on before, and before we get and dive completely into the topic, I just wanted to real quickly have you talk about some of the more recent papers and some of the more recent research that you've been doing. And eventually we'll get to the vaccines, but I know you had been working on a paper last time we met, or last time we talked. And what's been going on since then?
Sure. So my most recent paper was characterizing the antibodies found in individuals infected with HIV very early after infection. So the deal is with HIV is that every now and again, let's say maybe a third of the people infected with HIV, about 3 years after they've been infected, their immune system starts to make these amazing antibodies. They're called broadly neutralizing antibodies, and they can stop just all different kinds of HIV variants, which is exactly what we want to generate via a vaccine. Because listen, there are so many different kinds of HIV, and we have no idea what someone is going to be exposed to. But if we could train their immune system to make one of these really, really amazing antibodies, we could protect lots and lots of people. The problem is these antibodies, well, they're special. And you can't see me from video, but I'm saying special with air quotes. There are normal antibodies, and then there are special antibodies. And the problem is, basically, the immune system in someone infected with HIV, the antibodies are just doing whatever they can. And it's not something that we can really mimic in a healthy person before they get exposed to HIV. And so our idea was to look earlier in infection and see if there's any hints or tricks we can learn earlier in infection that we actually have a chance of mimicking via vaccine. And I isolated hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of antibodies. And, creationists really love to use the immune system as this example of this perfectly designed system. And, oh, how could this immune system have evolved? It's so elegant to be. Your immune system in response to HIV is frankly just an idiot. It's like, when you have a bar fight between two people who don't know how to fight, and they're just like throwing their arms at each other, and nobody's really doing any damage. They're exerting more energy than they're actually inflicting damage.
So declawed cats.
Yes. That's how I would describe the early antibody response to HIV, expending a lot of energy without really doing anything productive. And so I had to sift through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these really garbage antibodies to find a subset that actually do something potentially useful. So there was a few years ago a trial, an HIV trial called RV144. It was done in Thailand, and there was a tiny, tiny bit of protection. Let's say I think it was something like 30%, but then it quickly dissipated. But when they looked into what mediated that tiny bit of protection, they saw it was these antibodies that could mediate something called antibody-dependent cell-mediated cytolysis. And that's just a fancy way of saying antibodies stuck to infected cells, and other immune cells could identify and kill those cells. And I found a bunch of those in HIV-infected individuals. And now that we know what those antibodies look like, we can work that into a vaccine design to actually evolve those antibodies on purpose. So what happened in RV144 wasn't really on purpose. It was just sort of a fluke. But now that we know what these guys look like and what they're capable of, we can try to generate them in a vaccine on purpose.
Oh, wow.
So, maybe. Yeah. All that is theoretical until we actually give it a go.
Yeah. But you're basically, there's more data. It's something that you're putting together that could potentially have some kind of, future ramifications, and you're essentially adding some really good research to the to the network of people working on this. Is this antibody that you essentially isolated? Is that something that's, I guess, created, controlled, directed by anything like the genes that they were isolating? Basically, that people had been found that makes them resistive to HIV, that they did in the leukemia gentleman who they did a bone marrow transplant that had been genetically modified to help block them. This is those kinds of genes don't create these antibodies at all. Is that not really what?
But we can talk about that in just a second. But it was actually interesting that so you can make lots and lots and lots of different kinds of antibodies. And it turned out the little family of antibodies that I found that were doing this is under really quite amazing selective pressure within humans. So normally when you look at these little families, there might be 2, there might be 4 different kinds. So, you might have vanilla and strawberry, and I might have chocolate and banana.
Yeah.
When you look at this particular gene family, there's lots of copy number variation. So you might have 2 copies, I might have 4. And then there are 14 different alleles and different flavors. And really in this system, that's really incredible polymorphism. So it seems as if this gene family is under selective pressure in humans and might be sort of an overall antiviral response. So when you look at influenza, this family of antibodies comes up. When you look at different kinds of hepatitis, this antibody family comes up again. So this little family evolutionarily might be incredibly important as a line of defense against viruses.
And really versatile. That's cool.
Yes. So what they're doing in those individuals that have been cured of HIV is totally different. Basically what they've done in that context is, so HIV needs 2 proteins to infect your cells. It needs a protein called CD4, and that's on the surface of one of the immune cells that HIV likes to eat. And it needs this, it's called a co-receptor CCR5. Just by chance alone, some people have a defective version of CCR5. So they are more resistant to HIV infection. And I say more resistant because CCR5 is not the only other receptor that HIV can use. It can use lots of other ones. So it's not to say that these people can't be infected with HIV. And it's not to say that this individual, the previous patient, the Berlin patient, and this current patient, they're calling, I guess, the London patient, they could still have HIV within their system that uses a different protein that could emerge. And I will tell you that's actually happened. So let me kind of go tell that story beginning to end. So what happens is in HIV, some individuals develop different kinds of blood cancers, lymphomas, leukemias, and it's got nothing to do with HIV. But if someone is dying from cancer, you have like this hierarchy of treatment. You have to treat whatever is killing the person first.
Yeah.
So if someone has a broken leg and they're hemorrhaging from their neck, you treat their neck first, not the broken leg. And in this case, it's the cancer. And so if cancer is killing someone, you need to get them a bone marrow transplant. Okay. Well, you need to get them a perfect match. So my cells put up flags to tell my immune system that they're a part of me. That's why your immune system doesn't attack your muscles and your heart and that sort of thing. So you can't just take my organs and put them into someone else, because their immune system will recognize my tissue as foreign and will attack it. So you have to have people that have similar flags on the surface of their cells to get, let's say, a liver transplant or a lung transplant or a bone marrow transplant. So it turns out this London patient, they couldn't find him a perfect match. But the next perfect match just happened to have that mutation in one of the HIV co-receptors. So if there was a perfect match available, they had to give him that perfect match, but there wasn't. So they could kind of do an experiment and give this individual it's called delta CCR5 bone marrow, which means that through radiation and chemo, they could kill that patient's immune system and give him a fresh immune system that was resistant to HIV. Now, an important fact of that was that, remember I said it wasn't a perfect match. So that guy's new immune system started attacking his old immune system and cleared the rest of it out. Well, it cleared out the rest of the potentially HIV-infected cells. Then the HIV kind of hides sometimes. Well, it killed those cells too. So this guy, to our current technology, doesn't have any detectable HIV, just like the Berlin patient. So we have the Berlin patient and the London patient. Now, this isn't really applicable to anybody else.
This is like a once in a lifetime type match. It's really rare that all these pieces line up properly.
Yes. And we are certainly not going to go to Southeast Asia and start giving people who don't have cancer, who are not dying of cancer, bone marrow transplants to cure their HIV. Like, this is, the Berlin patient almost died from his treatment. This is not a casual surgery here. The other thing is, you remember I said that these cells are just resistant to HIV. They aren't completely impervious to it. So several years ago, they tried this kind of experiment in someone else, and a different kind of virus emerged. And so normally this virus is outcompeted by the virus that uses CCR5. But when you wiped out that lineage of virus, it basically had this brand new immune system to eat all to itself. And that patient almost died from HIV, even though he had the delta CCR5 bone marrow transplant. So this is very exciting and very interesting, but we need to do more work to figure out how we can do something like this in a normal person as a therapy option, as a prevention option. Yeah,
because you don't want to almost kill everybody that you're trying to cure.
No,
that's
especially
usually
when they're not dying.
Yeah, I mean, it's just another example of just a really interesting data point to put in the system. I'm just curious if the stuff that you were looking at was any comparison or in the same network. So it sounds like it's so that's cool. Those are two promising things out there that we'll see more in the future, hopefully.
Yes.
Maybe. I don't know. That's the interesting thing is your whole career is built on this type of stuff. And every time we talk to you, it's like you compound one thing onto the next.
Yeah.
It almost makes me feel like we should continue to sponsor scientists. I don't know.
Yeah. Funding in the new budget.
Well, we've got a president who says we're going to cure it in 10 years. So I'm waiting for the cash
check, right?
in the man hands to.
He's going to cut the defense budget and send it over to the science team.
Yeah.
And I know it. I know that's going to happen.
I'm sure that's his plan. For 10 years?
Oh, okay.
Anyway.
Womp womp.
Yeah. I should get that. I should get that for the show so I could play that every time.
Oh, the sound effect, yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that inspired the reunion tonight was not just Abbie's love of vaccinations, right? But because, again, some of the Reddit threads and different things I come across, there's quite a few anti-vax conversations that seem to be happening more often than not. And there was an organization I volunteer with called Center for Inquiry. And, every once in a while, we'll get somebody that's trolling our posts on Facebook. And the funny thing is our vaccination posts seem to be trolled the most. It's insane, the people that want to come on and be like, I'm an atheist, but vaccinations are stupid and they kill kids. Like, that's not what I heard, but and so I'm going to read the challenge essentially that they gave to us. Essentially, they said, CFI, all I need to see is information that was requested in a lawsuit that shows that vaccinations are being tested for safety and effectiveness. I will change my mind. I'm not anti-vax or anti-science, but I am anti-scientific fraud and scientific findings being manipulated to improve the cost and benefit of an analysis of multinational conglomerates. The evidence specifically...
Oh, God, he's still going.
Oh, they're going on. The evidence specifically to these studies, one can use to ascertain the safety and effectiveness of vaccines is now missing. In fact, as admitted by our government, these studies do not exist because they have not been done in the last 32 years. So if you find me studies, I'll change my mind.
Okay.
So there's a lot to unpack there, right?
Well, I mean, it's people. There's lots of layers there. One, it's just if I don't know something, therefore that knowledge is being hidden. Or that knowledge doesn't exist.
The deep state.
It's anti-capitalism. It's anti-world, anti-global economy. And it's just amusing to me because, I don't think a lot of people understand that the foundational basis of every single vaccine was in an academic institution. And so I have been involved in numerous studies of vaccine trials in animals and non-human primates, and every single level they assess safety. I'm currently part of an organization that runs all of the vaccine trials at my university, and all of those are first line. You just give the vaccine, you give the product to people, and it is strictly to assess safety. You aren't even allowed to talk about the efficacy of the drug or the vaccine. You just need to know, if I give this vaccine to 10,000 people, what happens? And if anything happens, there is so much paperwork that has to be filed, and so many people that have to be notified. And if it is a international collaboration, let's say we have a vaccine trial, a worldwide vaccine trial going on, and at our site, it's called a serious adverse event. A serious adverse event happens. There is a huge chain of events that occurs where everybody involved in this study, no matter what part of the planet they're on, knows that this occurred. And if it is a death, if it is anaphylaxis, if it is something really dire, they shut everything down until, everything is determined, and they might even shut down the trial entirely. And that's a decade before it ever gets to you at your physician's office getting a shot. To say that there's no safety, that's literally like 90% of what we do. It's not the efficacy. It is just assessing the safety.
Exactly. And so I went ahead and I looked at the actual lawsuit, right? This is the lawsuit that came through, and we'll claim I don't know, it's called ICANN, and it stands for Informed Consent Action Network. They are the plaintiff in this lawsuit, and they're basically suing DHS. And what they did is they asked for certain records, right? And they claim that you're supposed to send proof of licensing, manufacturing, testing, labeling, warnings, yada, 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 storage and administration, a whole bunch of different things on vaccines every so many years, according to a law that was created in 1987. And I believe it's every 2 years you have to send. So they're not actually suing about whether vaccinations were tested or whether you went through all these trials or anything. They're suing because of a law that says you're supposed to submit this, so that people can view it.
I'm not sure DHS would even be the people. I mean, they aren't the people running these trials and would have access to that information. I'm not sure they're even suing the right people. I mean,
I would think that would be in the FDA
or the actual organizations running trials. I mean, so there is the regulations for running these kinds of trials.
Is there a place that people can see it? Like, do you know if there's a place where? Because that's kind of what he's asking. He says, "I want to be able to see the studies."
Hold on a second, though. Hold on,
because I know they protect that stuff a lot.
Yeah. So this is the reason the DHS or the HHS or whatever it is, the Human and Health Services Department, the reason that they are holding this, right, is because supposedly people are supposed to file with them every 2 years an update on whether this vaccination is still safe. So it's not the base level records for before a vaccination.
Okay.
This is after the fact. This is basically like a maintenance record, like kind of let you pay on your car when you go to register every year on your birthday and pay your outrageous taxes that don't go to the road but to giving tax breaks.
But if there were no deviations from protocol is the way I would call it. So like vaccines are supposed to be stored at certain temperatures. And they are, federal investigators will come and check your freezers. They will check your refrigerators. They will check your equipment. And if there are no deviations from protocol, there shouldn't really be anything to report. And if there are no serious adverse events, there wouldn't be either. So I'm not really sure what kind of information they're. I'm just genuinely confused as to what they think they're asking for.
So
they're Vogons. They're Vogons looking for paperwork. That's what it is.
According to this,
well, I mean, there's plenty of paperwork. It's just I don't think the paperwork they're looking for is there.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's exactly. So what? Again, they're hinging all on this older law that basically says. So let's say you're XYZ corporation. You create this vaccine. You run your trials. You get everything certified. To keep your vaccination certified, every 2 years you have to submit some sort of a test survey. And so in the long run, they're not actually suing any of the corporations for not doing it. They're suing just to get the information on whether that actually happened. And so the DHS, essentially that department came back and actually said they can't find any documents in their tracking system to show that any of these tests have been ran. Right.
Oh, so re-up tests.
Yes.
But I'm not sure that's actually done.
Well, if that law exists,
there's so much testing done on the front end. Are they just want like QC testing? Like they want this lot number had X picograms of like.
Well, you know what they're doing. They're not actually. They don't actually care about the results or care about any of that. They honestly just want to find a loophole. Well, the whole
this is lawyers just attacking things that they can say they won.
Yes,
so
and
I
yes.
mean, I tell you what would happen if for example, I would tell you I got the HPV vaccine, and it I think is kept very cold. And I remember like the second or third time I got that shot, like I almost passed out. Like it was really painful. So my physician would have to report that. And let's say someone really did pass out. Like anytime there's any deviation from norm, like it's the physician's responsibility to report that. I'm just really confused as to what they think the DHS. I don't know.
It sounds like just lawyers trying to see if they can win something. So if you have a weird thing, or like I don't know if they filed this paper, it doesn't have any effect on whether or not vaccines work or whether or not they're effective or anything. But you can say that we sued the DHS against vaccines and we won. I can put that banner on my website or something ridiculous like that. Like this sounds like semantic battles that lawyers have and paperwork.
Well, and I will tell you this: there's so much safety that is performed on the front end, but like I said before, it comes within a decade of the actual commercial market, that actually prevents better vaccines from ever making it to the market. So for example, we have a polio vaccine. It works. It's great. We don't really think about it in the US at all, but when you go to the third world country, it becomes an issue because we give a live attenuated oral polio vaccine, which means in someone who gets the vaccine, the virus can mutate in that individual and become a wild type pathogenic polio. Well, that's not a problem for the person who's vaccinated, but if that polio comes into contact with someone who is not vaccinated, then it's a major problem. And so there are scientists who have developed so evolution once again. Yeah. So in the case of the vaccine, the attenuated version is less fit than the wild type version. So there is a selective advantage for reversion back to the wild type. Some viral evolutionary biologists have figured out a way to attenuate the virus without it affecting the replicative fitness of the virus. So that would be a better vaccine candidate because it has no reason to revert back to a wild type pathogenic state. That's never going to make it to the market because there's absolutely no financial incentive to do that. And there's no reason to go through all of these safety. I mean, there's so much money on the front. This has to go into so many people to make sure that it's safe before it would ever go into someone else. We already have a version that works, so we're not going to do it. Oh man, there is so much safety stuff. So to be said, oh man.
Okay, so the law that they were talking about is the National Childhood Vaccine Injury Act. And the reason this is to some extent a non sequitur, and then we can kind of move on from this, but
yeah.
Essentially what it was is the law was proposed to eliminate the potential for financial liability to vaccine manufacturers due to vaccine injury claims. So the law was actually designed by conservatives and signed into law by Ronald Reagan back in the 80s.
To protect the
pharmaceutical industry.
Yes, it's actually, and so what they're doing is saying, hey, you didn't submit the safety regulations, and these people are saying, well, this stuff's so safe, there's a reason we're not submitting this anymore. We don't have records. Why pay all this money and do all these different trial things? And some of it I understand, and some of it I don't agree with a little bit. Some of what I do understand is should we have regulations? Should we be able to go back and retest these things? Yes, if that's what we want to do. But we should also create a standard that says this is safe based on this and accept it as long as you follow this. Yeah. As long as you follow this formula, great.
I would say this as well, that things, at least in the context of new drugs, If there is a drug available, or if this case there is a vaccine available, it also goes through the trials again because it is unethical to withhold a drug that we know works, that we know is safe, a vaccine that we know works, and give someone a placebo. So in place of placebo, you give somebody the standard of care. So let's say we do have a new influenza vaccine. You can't have a placebo group. You can't say, well, you guys are just going to get sick this year. So you give one group the standard vaccine and one group the new vaccine. Well, anytime in any group there is, again, a serious adverse event, that always gets reported. And let's say, listen, nothing is without risk. You get in your car in the morning, you drive to work, you could be an offender bender. And by chance alone, you could have, let's say, a really bad fever in response to a vaccine. They're going to report that. And then maybe in the new vaccine group, that doesn't come up as often. So they want to report that as well. Everything gets reported.
Yeah. And it creates an iterative process. So instead of competing each vaccine against zero, you're competing vaccines against vaccines.
Yes.
Yes. And that's kind of the so when I started doing the research and I finally understood what the law meant, then I was kind of like, okay, well, all right, here's the deal. It's not that they're not filing these studies, it's that things become conclusive enough if you follow this recipe. There's no reason to go, outside of it. And so I looked up some of the actual safety regulations and we'll pick on the HVP vaccination, right? And there's all sorts of different safety indexes, and they explain to you what the risks are and what your percentage in millions will be of getting this, and they explain all that. And the idea behind it is that law from 1986 or 87, whenever it was signed into law, was to actually help protect these companies that are putting these out in case people have adverse reactions. Now we're 25, 30 years later, we're able to actually see the reactions in a different manner. Where we can dissect them differently.
Well, we have the internet. Yeah. If something happens in a center in Atlanta, we email everybody and they can stop the trials in Tanzania.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And so there's so much more that we have nowadays. You don't need the different regulations. But what's amazing about, anti-vax arguments, honestly, is just that people see this and then they immediately latch onto this, autism thing, this, this creates this, the MMR, we get these triple shots and this is ridiculous, and people latch onto these things because it's a fear tactic that people just embrace, right? They're embracing this argument because it makes them feel safer to reject large public knowledge. And it's a conspiracy mentality that I think we're all kind of bred with a little bit, right? It helps protect you back in certain environments.
And it's an argument from ignorance as well. None of these I can't have an intellectual conversation with these individuals as I would a colleague. They do not have the vocabulary. They do not have the knowledge base to have, even in my idea, a very simple conversation on these topics. But you can't convince them of that because they have done that research. And in my perfect world, everybody gets one vaccine that contains absolutely everything that you need to be protected from. One vaccine, let's say, with 1,000 different pathogens in it. That would be perfect. There is no such thing as too many, three. Do you have any idea how many different foreign entities your body is dealing with on a daily basis? Three doesn't even mean anything. And
but there's mercury in it.
Yeah.
Oh, we're not getting into that.
Well, I know. That's basically what this is this is basically a lawsuit on paperwork, and they're going to claim that this has some kind of relation to the efficacy of these. Like I said, this is them looking for a win. So this isn't about the the efficacy. This isn't about the functionality of these vaccines. This isn't a lawsuit saying that this is dangerous, and we found a bunch of examples of why this is dangerous. This is just people that didn't fill out the paperwork, but we're going to try to claim a win, and they will. If they say that, no, this law exists, the pharmaceutical companies should put this out there, they will run around and say they won, and they will say they won against vaccines, and Big Pharma is hiding things, or whatever. I mean, this is just, it's all about the spin machine and the internet and some of the stuff that we've got going on right now. These are the battles that we're having are not about the science. We're having all these emotional arguments and everything. It's just frustrating. So I mean, it's really nice to have just a couple of points that you had about all the safety and everything that we've got on here.
Well, and all of that safety is taken into account when we consider who this vaccine can be recommended for. So once again, let's go to HPV. So men can't get cervical cancer. Okay, we established that physiology there. They do not have cervixes. They cannot get cervical cancer, despite the fact that if males got the HPV vaccine, they would help protect women from getting cervical cancer. We could not, in good conscience, recommend that males get the HPV vaccine just to protect women, because males would be taking on a risk, like I said, to anything comes with a risk, but any risk of a vaccine to no benefit to themselves. But here's what happened. So nobody smokes anymore. And especially young people don't really smoke any, like, cigarettes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, people don't smoke cigarettes anymore. And so physicians were seeing all of these young people come in with head, neck, and throat cancers, who were not smokers and weren't from a smoking home, they had no risk factor for it. And so they started investigating what was causing these cancers. Well, turns out that they were caused by HPV. So the fact that HPV can cause other kinds of cancers was masked by the fact that, people used to be heavy smokers and heavy drinkers. And so people assumed that those cancers were caused by those activities. In that context, and weren't ever tested.
So I need to call my doctor this weekend and schedule my vaccination. Basically,
I think you're too old at this point. I think you're too old. They won't do it.
Darn it!
Because it's better for younger folk. It's like the Jedi. You're too old. You can't get the HPV vaccine or be a Jedi Knight.
Oh, man, it's ageism. This is ageism.
It is.
Okay. Oh well.
But I mean, that was
for kids. Yeah, if you got little boys versus little girls, so it's like obviously the HPV thing will be something that I deal with my two little girls. But I did not know this, and anyone listening that did not know this with their little boys, this could be something that they need to look into as well.
But we would not.
That's awesome.
Absolutely. But we would not recommend that vaccine for boys until it became clear that they could get some benefits from the vaccine as well.
Wow. Wow. Oh man, I love learning new stuff. That's so cool.
Well, not everybody sees it that way. Like one funny article I found was so this kid in Kentucky was quarantined during a chickenpox outbreak because he didn't have his chickenpox vaccine. Huh. And he was suing the health department for putting out this quarantine because he didn't get to finish his senior year of basketball. He couldn't play basketball because his parents refused to vaccinate him. And so he was saying that was a breach of his religious liberty and yada yada. And I was reading this article. And do you guys know Typhoid Mary?
Do you know
the story?
I don't know. I know this. I know the name, but I don't know the story.
So back in the day, long time ago, there was this woman who was an asymptomatic carrier of typhoid, and she was working in different households, employed in different households, cooking their meals, washing their dishes, and that is precisely how typhoid is spread. And what happened was she would go to a household, she'd work for them. One of the family members would die from her giving them this bacteria, and she would go work in another household. She was changing her name frequently to evade local public health individuals, and she was refusing to wash her hands. She didn't wash her hands. She thought that the U.S. government was persecuting her and preventing her from earning a living and just going after her. She killed, it is estimated, around 50 individuals because she refused to wash her. She refused to follow public health advice.
That pesky germ theory of disease.
and it was the government. It was the government persecuting her. She was literally killing people. And just this kid, this whiny kid who is. Then the other thing is, it's always for religious reasons that they can't get these vaccines. Vaccines didn't exist when any of these religions were started. So they have chosen to interpret in English their chosen religious text to justify this behavior. But there is nothing in any holy book that says you cannot get vaccines. And frequently, what occurs in, let's say, conservative Jewish populations, their religious leaders will say, yes, this ingredient isn't necessarily kosher. However, it is preventing human misery and human disease, death, and illness. So we are going to allow this, even though it is not technically kosher. Listen, no, it is not for religious reasons. This is some kid being raised by some conspiracy theory parents that is upset that he couldn't finish his senior basketball season.
Those stories, we've been hearing those crop up more. We had the first batch of the measles problem that just hit in the Detroit area in a Jewish community. Someone came over, I can't remember where they had gone to, and then they came back as a carrier for measles, and they infected people in a Jewish community that was not getting proper vaccinations. I don't know the reason the Jewish community wasn't getting their vaccinations.
Well, it's also very local specific. What does this group say is religious reasons, and well, amazingly that same group somewhere else it isn't.
Well, we run into a lot of this. It's basically that the vaccine thing is kind of pumped into the religious argument. I think mostly because of the adversarial relationship that religion and science has now. Like 150 years ago, it used to be kind of combined. So a lot of monks and people who were doing research in their monasteries, they were the scientific thinkers, and they were able to square the circle with the divine first mover and Earth being the center of the universe and all that other stuff. And as time has gone on, it's been really hard to square that circle, and so it has become adversarial. And so for some people, that is a real thing that they have, and that's one of the reasons why they just deny science altogether, and they just go with whatever leader they have. That if they have an opinion that's against it, that's where it kind of comes from. I don't understand how you could, completely and totally be against that. It's like the Flat Earther documentary that we've been seeing, Beyond the Curve, that came out. Well, they bought some $20,000 gyroscope that can measure the radial velocity of the Earth is relatively 15 degree per hour, I think it was, rotation, and this machine was reading that as its datum, as its zero, and they were like, "That's weird. I don't understand why that." Like on this documentary, but it's what it is like these people buy this technology, or in the case of the religious and anti-vaccination, they live in the community that is buffed up and benefits from this technology. But what they don't realize is that all these claims they're making against it, they use the things created by that technology to test it. It's like you're a gyroscope created by the basics of physics, which has told us that the Earth is spinning, and it's telling you that. And you're thinking you're going to buy this tool that's going to tell you against the physics and the laws of physics that it was specifically created for. The same kind of thing with the people. They're trying to use the scientific method to disprove vaccinations.
Yes.
The whole reason vaccinations were ever given in the first place was because the foundational beliefs of the scientific method said that these things work. So it's
and that's kind of funny too. The first vaccines, they didn't know why they worked. They just know they worked. And it was from a very pragmatic perspective. It really wasn't necessarily from a scientific perspective. Now we do that. But yeah.
Yeah. That's frustrating. I don't know, Chris. Did you want to go into the next segment on here? Or, I didn't know if what you had planned on for the rest of this.
So for the next part of the discussion, let's do something a little more, I don't know, lighthearted, I guess is the way to say it. There was an article that came out on NPR, no surprise, right? That talks about the world's first insect vaccine and how it could help bees fight off deadly diseases. So we talked about the necessity of vaccines, right, with humans. And we've gone through all sorts of discussions about why it's ridiculous people are against vaccines. But the world's first insect vaccine is kind of neat. And so I'll be honest, I don't know a lot about this. Abby, have you heard anything about this?
I have not. But so the way vaccines work is we take advantage of the fact that we have something called an adaptive immune system. So your body has a series of cells that can remember past times you were sick. So the chickenpox you got when you were little, or the chickenpox vaccine you got, you have immune cells circulating in you right now that can recognize that virus, even though you're not sick right now. So that's normally an animal
limited
effect. Yeah. So like everything has some kind of immune system. So even plants and trees have an immune system. But I don't think that bees have an adaptive immune system. So I'd really be interested in seeing how this works.
Yeah. So what the article says is that the vaccines solve the problem that bees have faced or other insects, because insects' immune systems don't have antibodies. So essentially, they don't have a memory to fight diseases. So they've designed this, I guess it's an edible vaccine, which I guess if I had to take a vaccine or give my kid a vaccine, I'd rather it be edible, honestly, than the shot.
Just logic question here. How else would you give the bees?
I have no idea.
The vaccine.
Teeny tiny syringes.
I know. I can just
I
can imagine. Yeah, you just like a super nano gun that shoots out tiny syringes.
In theory, you could also make a genetically modified bee and just alter their genome to have some kind of protection, is essential. But yes, this vaccine in their food, that's cool.
Yeah, you get the CRISPR action going there. Yeah. What it says in the study was that what they're talking about for this is the American foul brood, or AFB, which is an infectious disease that devastates hives and can spread at a calamitous rate. It's often introduced by nurse bees. The disease works by bacteria feeding on larvae and then generating more spores to spread further. And so this is kind of like a something that's going to be devastating to the whole hive itself. We've mentioned bee stuff in the past on this show about the hive collapse disorder and a bunch of other things. So this one's really easy to work on. Maybe they understand this one really well. So they're kind of testing out, this, and maybe they'll be able to figure out something more complicated, more difficult in the future. So maybe this like a really simple one that they didn't really have to go too crazy in, and they were able to apply it. Because you would think you would want to start on the easiest one, so you have a success, so people think it's a good idea. You can get more funding. That just seems like probably what they're doing here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're testing out optimal dosages, times of delivery, and like you said, they're looking to be able to fight the colony collapse, essentially, right? Because that's pretty important, I think, for our society. If we don't fight that, we're not going to we won't be able to live if all the bees die off. We just won't.
Well, what was it? The M. Night Shyamalan movie, The Happening, where the bees disappeared. And Mark Wahlberg was worried. I don't want that to be our future.
What movie was that?
The Happening.
The Happening. Wow.
Yeah. It was a movie that talked about the immune system of trees, and all the bees disappeared. And spoiler alert for like a 2001 movie. Yeah, the trees are pissed. So it's an interesting movie. It's M. Night Shyamalan's. Here's a story, and then the whole thing twists in the last 30 seconds of the movie. But yeah, no, The Happening. All the bees died, and Mark Wahlberg was upset. Cliff notes.
I did not know that. I guess I'll be honest. I don't think I've ever seen that movie. Or if I did, I don't remember it.
Yeah, it's okay. You didn't miss it.
I don't think Shama, whatever, however you say his name. I don't think he had that great of movies, honestly. Like, The Sixth Sense was really cool, and then once you figured it out, you're like, no, all right, okay, I get it. That's cool. You can never watch it again. And then I really liked The Village. Like, I really thought The Village was, like, a really good movie. And I probably saw that in the theater, like, 4 times. But after that, I kind of just was like, no, don't like his movies. Like, Signs, awful movie. Couldn't stand it.
Abby, are you a semi sort of horror twisty movie fan?
No. So even like movies I want to see. So I want to see Us, but I am a wuss when it comes to scary movies. So I will never ever see that movie. But I will
you can't even snuggle with Arnie Man and check that movie out.
No, can't do it. There are so many like huge movies that I haven't seen because I don't watch Game of Thrones because the first episode was too scary.
Wow. All right. Fair enough.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, comfort. You don't want to make your life miserable with nightmares or something, I guess. That's fine.
Maybe it's just because I dream nightmares. Maybe that's why I like scary stuff in real life. Because I dream a nightmare, it's the same thing as watching a movie sometimes. Maybe they can vaccinate against that.
My nightmares are dreaming about work, and then I get up and I go to work.
Yes.
I'm assuming Abby probably sees like vials and like test tubes. No,
I just do like work in my nightmares, and then I wake up and I'm exhausted, and like you said, and then you have to go back to work, and you're like, oh Christ.
And what's the guy's name? Goldberg in Office Space. He's like, you need to finish your TPS reports.
Yeah.
And then
oh yeah.
So do you have that, Hanna? Is that like a thing for you? Do you get that guy? I mean, you never worked in an office, so.
No, what I get is like this used to happen to me. I used to do a job where it was the same thing over and over and over and over, like all day for weeks. And it's good money, but like I would dream that I was grinding these little parts, and then I would wake up and realize I had to brush my teeth to go grind those little parts. And it was
soul crushing.
You could feel the like dejected nature of life itself leaking out of your body, and you're like, I am becoming one with the dirt. It was terrible. I don't know. And like every once in a while a job comes through like that that I have to go with anyways. Right now I'm doing one at work that's like that, but I kind of like those every once in a while because nothing in my life has been even remotely consistent after I decided it was time to procreate.
Right. Nice peace, the peace of monotony.
Yeah.
Anyway, so back to the bees. So the reason this is interesting is because they're trying to, and I guess we could talk a little bit about this because maybe Abby knows more about this side of it, right? So the idea is they're trying to create this, and they're going to try and sell this product. I mean, is that something that if you develop something, are you as a scientist, are you able to do that? I mean, if you work for like a government university, are you able to develop a formula, sell it, sell this on the commercial market?
Well, what would happen is so I think the university technically has domain over anything we do. And that's in a way a good thing because they have lawyers and they have professionals who sit in offices and figure this stuff out. And ultimately you would get a cut. But yeah, it's not like I would personally go to a pharmaceutical company and have them manufacture something that let's say I discovered. And I think that's something that's lost a bit on anti-vaccine proponents who say, oh, the money, follow the money. Substantial, almost virtually all of the preliminary work that goes into vaccines is done by academic scientists. And so whether that's technicians, whether that is PhD scientists doing research, we don't actually make very much money. If you want to know how much money we make, you can, I mean, it's a government standardized thing for graduate students and postdocs. And many public school professors, you can find out how much they make online in various state resources. But to say, oh, we follow the money, and when I was a first-year postdoc, I made $37,000 a year, and that was as a PhD research scientist. So our souls would be incredibly cheap if we were selling our souls to big pharma. Yeah.
It's something that I've heard multiple times is that they're actually trying to, some of the candidates right now that are running have been talking about changing some of these things. Is that what we see in the pharmaceutical world is that the government and the state fund the bill for the initial research, and then once it's been passed on, all that initial upfront cost has been basically funded by the state, and then when something has some kind of success, then it's taken over and it works its way through a relatively light process to where pharmaceutical industry gets it and can start doing some of the more human trials, stuff like that. But what we don't see is the loyalty or a royalty system that, big pharma is making tons of money when they didn't put up the initial front research money to do this. So the state and the scientists and the doctors and the universities should get a bigger cut of that $1 trillion pharmaceutical market that's out there. And this is something that I would love to see a little bit better. But this vaccine thing here is probably kind of a hybrid. So when these guys are saying something like they're doing, maybe they've essentially, somebody else did the research and they kind of found some stuff and they have started a corporation and they're going to start trying to, private fund this so that they would be able to bring it to market. My uncle, that's what he does, is he buys up pharmaceutical companies that have a property and he builds them up so they can sell stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. So, unfortunately, Abbie, I guess you're out of luck if you create a vaccine to cure HIV to become a multimillionaire. But I'm sure somebody will make that.
I think it's still technically possible.
Nobel Prize, cure HIV. That's $1 million right there. Boom, boom.
Technically, I think you still could be. But the fact of the matter is the odds of that happening are so vanishingly small that if that is your motivator, you're not going to be very motivated in this kind of work.
Yeah, you do really have to have it in your heart of hearts.
Fair enough. Well, as we close the show out for tonight, we always do a segment, and I'm sorry to spring this on you at last moment, Abbie, but I'm sure you'll be able to come up with something random. So at the end of the episodes, Hanna and I do quick save, and for anybody listening that's never heard us before, because they're just like, oh, I've never heard of this podcast. You guys are awesome. Blah blah blah. We do a quick save, and quick save is essentially as you're scrolling through your week, it's just random things that you save that you go, hey, I think this is great. I want to read it later, and I think I should share it. So in our world, we have with the podcast, it's we vomit our random saves out. Sometimes it's topical, sometimes it's not. Tonight, Hanna and I were not on the same page in what we were reading this week, but I think it's a fun exercise. So Hanna, I'll let you go first. What's your quick save for the week?
This week has been, I've been kind of like trying to depressurize from the intensity of the world, and I've been finding myself drifting off into audiobooks and just trying to get away from some of the intensity. The Mueller report and everything has been coming out, and I have opinions on that, and I've just been trying to just decompress a little bit. And so I was just following some natural growth down a YouTube rabbit hole, and I landed on people having just full-on religious seizures, but all that body movement and dancing was set to Slayer, and it's awesome. It's moshy, it's screamy, it's just full-on. It's kind of like when the people do the Street Fighter videos where they make them look like the people are having they're being overcome by the spirit, and they're fighting a Street Fighter guy and getting shot with the blue laser or big fireballs or whatever. Like it's Slayer, the soundtrack of hell if there was one, and it's set in a church with a bunch of people having just full on spaz moments, and it's just a nice chuckle and a nice lighthearted way to just kind of end your day if you're just goofing off.
Fair enough. My quick save for the week was an article on Deadline about the Dark Tower series. So we've probably talked about this on and off, and it's kind of one of those things where if you don't know me, that was Stephen King was the first author that I fell in love with as a kid. Probably because I like horror stuff a lot, and that was the easiest thing to get my hands on. And a lot of people have kind of crapped all over the Dark Tower series. People say nobody makes Stephen King books into good movies. And I won't disagree to some extent. I mean, for Christ's sake, they had Under the Dome, which somehow hit, I think, 3 seasons. And halfway through the first season, I stopped watching because not only did it deviate so far from the book, it was no longer entertaining to watch. It just wasn't. It was stupid. I couldn't stand it.
It's a weird IP problem that Stephen King books have. There's a couple of them that have been decent, but on the long run, you'd think that people would be able to take a nice story and turn it into something, but it's kind of the Hollywood grinder. Just kind of destroys anything nice.
Exactly. And so this week I had a article because I heard rumors that this is happening, but it's official. They're starting to actually cast for the Dark Tower to do an Amazon show series. So I don't think it's going to be specifically. It'll be. I'm assuming it'll be kind of like Game of Thrones, except for on Amazon, but probably a little bit less violent. I mean, for Christ's sake, Stephen King did.
Could Abby watch it? Would it be that scary?
No, I think you could watch it. I don't know.
Gunslinger is more actiony than it is really horror. I mean, it's dark. Okay. It's dark, but it's actiony.
It is very dark. There is a lot of people that die, but it's not like they don't sit there and behead. I guess Game of Thrones spoilers for anybody that's never seen episode 1. They don't behead the traitor in it. I mean, the gunslinger chases is chased by they're chasing the man in black, right? And essentially that's one of the epic sagas is how do you find the evilest thing that crosses all of the different multiverse realms, right? And they actually have like a multiverse discussion where they like leave their current universe and move to another universe. So it's actually really good. And in fairness, the first book is a little slow, but it's a really good series. So you could probably watch that, Abby, and you probably would not get nightmares.
Nice.
Yeah, and so they cast, like, the big news of it was because they cast the main guy, right? Like, it's not going to be Idris Elba again. It's going to be some newbie, some new face, some fresh guy that they can imprint onto the show.
Yes, and I'll be honest, I'm a little sad they didn't cast Idris. I saw the Dark Tower movie and I loved it, so I thought it was a good. I was scared. I complained about it. I'll be frankly honest. My wife was like complaining because she's like, "You complained about it." My son hated going with me because I complained. I'm like, "That's not how it happened. No, that's not it." But he's such a really good actor that like he even made that movie like a worthwhile movie to watch. But I will tell anybody, if you've never read the Dark Tower series, don't go watch the movie. Don't watch it. It'll make no sense to you. You're gonna be like, "What is this?" And that's where they failed, because if you have not read the full series, you will not understand half of what's going on in that movie. You just won't. It's not connected enough to be able to do that, unfortunately.
Oh well.
So that was my quick save for the week.
So Abby, you got one? Have you plumbed the depths of your mind?
So yeah, I've been trying to escape social media and my normal news online platforms lately as well. So I've been watching a ton of Hulu and Netflix and any way to kind of get away from that. And I have actually been loving movie trailers and TV show trailers lately. They have really like knocked some of these out of the park. And it actually started with the Umbrella Academy trailer. I love that trailer. I watched it like 500 times.
Yeah, and the part where they're dancing and everything. Yeah,
and
so cool.
And I love that series. And then the Killing Eve trailer. So season 2 is going to drop in like 2 weeks or so. And I love the first season so much. And the first trailer for season 2, again, I've seen at least 500 times. Like you guys need to, like, even if you haven't seen season 1, just watch the season 2 trailer and you'll get caught up to speed. It's so good. And then I guess it was last week, Netflix released the season 2 trailer for Sabrina, The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, and it's cool. It's just really cool.
I heard that's like, it's not like bubbly like the cartoon show or the TV show was. It's a little darker.
No, it's not like the 90s Sabrina we grew up with.
But how did you watch that?
It's still like, it's a show I watch with my stepgirl. So it's a youngish show, But that being said, it's a fun little story.
It's not too scary for the
It's not too scary. It's not too scary for Abby, and you can watch it with your preteen children.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely a start there.
Yeah, and I actually watched the first season of Sabrina, and I really liked it. Honestly, I actually really liked that show. I think it's very well written. It's very well acted. It's kind of funny because, some of me gravitates, as an atheist towards that Satan stuff, right? So like some of me likes just like every time they would go praise Satan or praise the Dark Lord or whatever, they would say that all the time. Like I just laugh every time. Like to me that's funny.
Yes. Yes, I did too.
And that's part of that series. I mean, they made comedy out of, the macabre, and it's just kind of funny. There's a couple of points where you're like, oh my gosh, this is so over the top ridiculous. It's not even funny. But at the other times, the story writing is very good. So I would definitely recommend. And I'll have to go look into Eve. I've never heard of that until you said that, Killing Eve. Never heard of that.
Just watch the trailer. Yeah. Just watch the trailer, the first one for season 2, and you will be like, it's wonderful. It's art.
Yeah. We've got a bunch of homework to watch this week.
I think companies know they have to put effort into their trailers these days because there's so much content out there. You've got to get people excited before your premiere, and they've just gotten into it for TV.
Exactly. Well, thank you, Abby, so much for joining us tonight. It was a lovely conversation. We'll have to have you on more often. More often than this. But thank you all, everybody, for joining us tonight. We will be back next week with another Cellar Door Skeptics. We'll be talking with our podcasting bro buddy friend of ours, Broyce. And we'll be talking about politics again. A little bit of a change, obviously. And we'll be talking about politics and a discussion about who could be better, Andrew Yang or Bernie Sanders. So stay tuned for that. We'll be back again, like I said, next week. And everybody have an amazing night.
You've been listening to a presentation of Cellar Door Skeptics. Check us out on Spreaker. CellarDoorSkeptics.com.
If you'd like to join the ranks of Patreons and sponsor the show, head over to patreon.com/Cellar Door Skeptics. For less than a 20-ounce soda or an energy drink each week, you can help sponsor us, the hosts, and our charity of choice. Patreon helps Cellar Door Skeptics create better content, become better activists, and it's going to help you stay healthier by drinking one less soda or one less energy drink each week. Click the link in the notes of the show to sponsor us today because we bring the discussion with the sources.